Tom and Alex, friends since childhood, shared a thirst for the unknown. Summers were for exploration, for pushing boundaries. They lived for the thrill of a challenge, the excitement of a new discovery. This year, Blackwood Forest beckoned. Nestled in the heart of the countryside, it promised mystery and adventure in equal measure. Blackwood was more than just trees and trails. It held a legacy. Locals whispered tales of strange occurrences, of shadows moving in the night. These stories, passed down through generations, spoke of a haunting presence, a presence that clung to the woods like morning mist. Tom, ever the skeptic, scoffed at the stories. He saw them as folklore, exaggerated tales to scare children. Alex, though, felt a shiver of apprehension. He couldn't shake off the feeling that something wasn't right about Blackwood. Despite his unease, he wouldn't back down. Not when Tom's excitement was so palpable. And so the pact was made. Two friends, bound by their shared sense of adventure, would venture into Blackwood. They told themselves it was to disprove the myths, to conquer their fears. But deep down, a part of them craved the thrill of the unknown, the chance to experience something truly extraordinary. The closer they got to Blackwood, the more frequent the warnings became. Locals, their faces etched with concern, urged them to turn back. They spoke of unexplained noises, of figures vanishing into thin air. Each story, more unsettling than the last, painted a picture of Blackwood as a place to be feared. One old woman, her eyes filled with a strange sadness, grabbed Alex's arm. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "The forest," she croaked, her voice raspy with age. "It doesn't like to be disturbed." Her warning hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. Tom, ever the pragmatist, dismissed the warnings as superstition. He argued that fear was contagious, that the locals were simply feeding off each other's anxieties. Alex, however, found himself increasingly troubled. The sincerity in the old woman's voice, the genuine fear in her eyes, it all struck a chord within him. As they reached the edge of the woods, the sun dipped below the horizon. Long shadows stretched out before them like grasping claws. The air grew heavy with a strange stillness. The sounds of birdsong were replaced by an unsettling silence. It was as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Stepping into Blackwood was like entering another world. The trees, their branches heavy with moss, formed a dense canopy overhead. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. Sunlight struggled to penetrate the dense foliage, casting the forest floor in perpetual twilight. As they ventured deeper, the trail became less defined. The silence was broken only by the sound of their own footsteps crunching on fallen leaves. Every rustle of wind, every snapping twig, sent shivers down their spines. The forest seemed to be watching them, its presence both alluring and unsettling. They walked for what felt like hours, the oppressive atmosphere weighing heavily upon them. Just as fatigue began to set in, they stumbled upon a clearing. In the center stood a dilapidated cabin, its wooden walls blackened with age and neglect. It looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. The cabin seemed to emanate an eerie silence, as if it were holding its breath. It felt out of place, a jarring reminder of human presence in this otherwise untouched wilderness. It was both intriguing and unnerving. The cabin, though dilapidated, offered shelter. They decided to set up camp nearby. As twilight deepened, casting long shadows across the clearing, a sense of unease settled upon them. The forest around them came alive with the sounds of the night. Crickets chirped, owls hooted, and unseen creatures rustled in the undergrowth, but there was something else too. A low, guttural growl that seemed to emanate from the depths of the forest. It was a primal sound filled with a hunger that sent shivers down their spines. As darkness enveloped the clearing, the temperature plummeted. A cold wind swept through the trees, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and something else, something metallic and vaguely sweet. It was the smell of blood. Tom, trying to mask his growing unease, busied himself with building a fire. Alex, unable to shake off the feeling of being watched, scanned the perimeter of the clearing. His eyes played tricks on him in the flickering firelight. Every shadow seemed to writhe and contort, taking on menacing shapes. Drawn by an unknown force, they found themselves standing before the cabin's weathered door. The wood was rotten and spongy to the touch. A heavy silence hung in the air, broken only by the sound of their own breathing. It was as if the forest itself was holding its breath. With a creak that seemed to echo through the clearing, the door yielded to their push. The interior was pitch black, the air thick with the smell of decay and something else, something stale and ancient, like the air inside a tomb. As their eyes adjusted to the gloom, they began to make out the shapes of furniture, draped in dust-covered sheets. A rocking chair creaked back and forth in the corner, seemingly propelled by an unseen hand. The faint glow of moonlight filtering through cracks in the boarded-up windows illuminated cobwebs that hung from the ceiling like macabre decorations. A sudden crash from upstairs sent a jolt of fear through them. Their hearts pounded in their chests. They exchanged a nervous glance. Was it an animal or something else? Curiosity warred with fear, compelling them to investigate. Upstairs, the air grew heavy, thick with an oppressive silence that seemed to press down on them. The floorboards groaned ominously beneath their weight. Each step was accompanied by the feeling that they were being watched, their every move scrutinized by unseen eyes. A low whisper seemed to slither from the shadows, sending chills down their spines. It was a sound devoid of any human warmth, cold and filled with an ancient malice. They couldn't make out the words, but the tone was unmistakable, a warning laced with a chilling promise of violence. A cold spot settled in the center of the room, the air growing heavy with the stench of decay. A child's toy, a wooden doll with vacant eyes, lay discarded in the corner. As they watched, it slowly turned its head to face them, its painted smile taking on a sinister aspect in the flickering moonlight. The whispers grew louder, swirling around them like a vortex of despair. They were surrounded by voices, disembodied and filled with an unspeakable sadness. The air crackled with unseen energy, and the temperature plummeted. They knew then that they were not alone. Panic surged through them, a primal instinct to flee from the unknown. They stumbled back, their eyes wide with terror. As they turned to run, a figure materialized in the doorway. It was the silhouette of a man, tall and gaunt, his features shrouded in shadow. His eyes, however, burned with an unnatural intensity, two pinpoints of malevolent light that seemed to pierce through them. He didn't move, didn't speak. He simply stood there, his presence radiating an aura of pure menace. They didn't wait to see more. They turned and ran, their hearts pounding in their chests. They could hear the figure's laughter echoing behind them, a chilling sound that seemed to claw at their sanity. The floorboards creaked and groaned beneath their weight, as if the house itself was trying to impede their escape. They burst out of the cabin and into the night, their lungs burning, their legs screaming for respite, but they didn't dare slow down. Not while that laughter still echoed in their ears, not while they could still feel the figure's eyes boring into their backs. They didn't stop running until they broke free of the forest's edge. Gasping for breath, they collapsed onto the dew-covered grass. The sounds of civilization, a distant hum. They had escaped, their bodies bruised but unbroken. Their minds, however, bore the scars of that night. Blackwood had tested them, pushed them to the very edge of their sanity. They had gone in seeking adventure, a thrill to break the monotony of everyday life. They had found something far more profound, something that would forever alter their perception of the world. As they made their way back to town, the rising sun painting the sky in hues of orange and gold, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Every rustle of leaves, every snapping twig sent shivers down their spines. They had escaped Blackwood, but Blackwood had not finished with them. The haunting stayed with them, a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurked beneath the surface of their world. They carried the memory of that night like a wound, a constant ache that throbbed with every beat of their hearts. In the years that followed, Tom and Alex rarely spoke of their experience. The memory of that night, of the whispers in the darkness and the figure in the doorway, was too painful to revisit. They tried to move on, to bury the past beneath the weight of normalcy. But Blackwood had a way of clinging to the soul. Sleep offered no escape, haunted by vivid nightmares of that night. The laughter, the whispers, the feeling of icy dread, it all came flooding back, as vivid and terrifying as the night it happened. They had learned a valuable lesson, one etched in fear and wonder. The world was a place of shadows and whispers, where things lurked just beyond the veil of perception. They had glimpsed the abyss, and the abyss had glimpsed back. The experience had changed them, forged an unbreakable bond between them. They had faced the unknown together, and in doing so, had discovered a strength they never knew they possessed. They had stared into the face of fear and emerged, forever marked by the encounter, but not broken.